I don't have anything to give this week.
You think of like one funny joke a week, and that's for the episode, so just say it.
Jen! I'm literally funny every single day. I think of a new funny thing minute by minute. Every new conversation.
Where is it?
They're coming out like wildfire. Boom, boom, boom.
It's been a minute, so where is it? Go. I don't hear anything.
Everyone just laughs. Screw you.
Because of me.
Leave me alone.
Okay. Well.
Oh, is this our moment?
This is your moment.
Welcome to Wait,
what? I don't remember if I'm supposed to go after.
Okay.
During. This is where we take common beliefs, sayings, or actions, deconstruct them, and have conversations, sharing our opinions and experiences about how they have affected us. Our goal is to share and extend conversations.
Awesome. Okay, so today we are, this is going to be released on close to the very end of March, and March is Endometriosis Awareness Month. End of February was Rare Disease Awareness Day, which we did a special episode about you, Erica. Last week we extended it into like about the parent side. So it's all kind of wrapped in one, and invisible illness and everything. And so this one is going to be specially dedicated for endometriosis awareness, though, because so far 3 of us have been officially diagnosed with endometriosis. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Hopefully you don't have it or get it, but chances are pretty likely. And the youngest one, I'm pretty sure she has it as well. Just hasn't been diagnosed. But so this is a special episode for endometriosis awareness / actually invisible illness, I'm going to say, because it really is an invisible illness as well. And we just want to sort of tell our stories and some of the things that we've found from that, things we've learned, things that we've found, things that just are interesting and in some cases just frustrating and not okay. So who wants to start?
How about you start? Hit it off.
You start?
You have the longest story with
it is the longest story. Okay, so it would have started when I first got my period, because I remember right from the start. So I was about, I don't know, 11 or 12. I don't remember exactly. And it was like just ridiculous pain. And I, even saying that, we've talked about this so much, like trying to describe and talk about pain is one of those really frustrating things. Specifically surrounding endometriosis, but also when it like chronic pain, invisible illness, and all that. So, because I can't even tell you the number of times that people would say, oh yeah, like my period's really bad too. And I'm like, you're literally standing in front of me talking. You can live your life still. Oh, but I have to take some medication, like ibuprofen for it or something. Oh, that's good. And you can still function. And like, not judging them, like I don't know. All I know is that with endometriosis, it is not like any pain. Actually, the way I will describe it is when I was in childbirth with each of you, I literally said, I'm like, this is what I've gone through every single month of my life so far. This childbirth. Like,
I will not find that out.
I'm like, yep, this is the pain. Yet at least with childbirth, I could have an epidural. So, and a baby at the end.
I was like, oh, the little reward. And they were like drugs.
So, yeah, and I remember like junior high already and everything. Like I would miss probably at least one day of school, if not a couple days of school. I would be like I overdosed ibuprofen and Tylenol. I mixed them because you actually can, and I overdosed on them all the time just to be able to like function, but not even like mentally actually function. Like it's such a weird thing. And then so like we went to doctors when I was 16. I remember the doctor looking at me and my mom and saying, well, she has two options. She can go on the pill or get pregnant. And I kind of went, what kind of options are those? Like, really? And at that time, which this will lead into another podcast at some point, at that time, neither was an option for me. I mean, obviously I wasn't going to get pregnant, but going on the pill, that wasn't an option. Because at that time, if you were on the pill, it meant you were having sex. And because of growing up in the church, like, I wasn't going to do that. That wasn't an option for me. And it got worse. The pain got worse and worse. University came, and so I went to university, and in high school, I would like, the pain would be so bad. And this was while overdosing on ibuprofen and all the medication. I had prescription medication finally that we would get and try, and still, like, overdosing on all of that, I still would end up passing out from pain. And I remember one time I was living by myself in an apartment, and the time I really remember, I passed out I don't know how many times. And I remember one time waking up on the bathroom floor and thinking, like, this is not okay. Because I was living by myself. And I was like, this is, like, something has to be done. And so I went to doctors, and like, their only thing was that, like, well, we'll just try a different prescription for you. And then I'd go to the pharmacist, and the pharmacist would be like, well, you shouldn't be taking so much, like, you're gonna eat your stomach out and you can't be doing this. And I'm like, there's no other options though, like, there's nothing else. So I did finally go on the pill in university. It helped short term, but then it just was back again. And the pill is like, it helped short term. It's not an answer though. Like, doctors still today, that still is their only answer. Because I remember going to the specialists, like OBGYNs with you guys, that's still their answer. Yeah. Like 30 years later.
Well, it's just kind of crazy because women have been having, like, people have been having periods since the beginning of time. And we don't have anything. Like, we have nothing. That, because even people who don't have, like, extreme, like, even people who don't have endometriosis, a lot of people still say that ibuprofen just really doesn't help all that much. Yeah. And it's like, how do we not have something for people with periods?
Totally. Yeah. And, you know, like, it's crazy because I thought, after over 30 years that there'd be something else at least. And literally the doctors are still saying the same thing, you know. And for me, it took over 30 years to get diagnosed. I think they say it's an average about 8 to 10 or something. For me, it was over 30, and that was like after 5 kids and like problems to the point of that I couldn't leave the house for at least a week. Like, not leave. I couldn't even barely leave my room because I lived in my bed, and I went from my bed to the bathroom, and that's it for at least a week. And there was no, like, anyways, that's another whole thing. But so the week before my period was so awful because of all the hormones and everything that was coming. So mentally, I was such a mess. And then the week of my period was literally, I was in bed, between the bed and the bathroom for over a week. And then because of, like, all the overdose and stuff, the week after, it was literally detoxing from all of the medications that I'd put in my body. And so I was such a mess. So by the time I had surgery, because that's where it ended up getting to for me, I didn't have an option by that point. By the time I had surgery, it was probably the last year, I had one okay week a month. Like, okay that I could actually plan stuff during that week. But anything in the other weeks, like I couldn't make plans or anything. And my OBGYN finally just said, like, you need to do the surgery. And so for me, I ended up having to have a hysterectomy. They did ultrasounds, they did scopes, they did all sorts of different tests, blood work, everything. Nothing showed. That's part of the other problem with all of this, is that they can do tons of tests. They did tests on both of you guys as well. Nothing showed. Nothing showed. And when the OBGYN came to me after the hysterectomy, and she said to me, she's like, I couldn't believe what a mess you were inside. She said, if I wasn't trained to know what I was looking at, I would have had no clue what I was even looking at inside you. It was so messed up. Like the fibroids that just grow. That's what endometriosis is. It's just growth that happens. It's uterine tissue that just grows, and it can grow anywhere, actually. And for me, like, it was so overgrown, and they couldn't see it on any ultrasound. I had more than one ultrasound. I had blood tests. I had, like, they would do a scope, like all of that stuff, and nothing showed. So, like, after all these years and all the technology and everything that we have, really, like, nothing until they go in to have to do a surgery. So, like, thankfully, because I was diagnosed and because of my symptoms and everything that I went through, when we took you guys in, it was a lot easier to get you guys diagnosed.
Yeah, that's true.
But that's really sad. And one of the other things that really gets me out of all of this is that I was told, and I remember being told with you guys as well at different times, well, just make sure, like, have your husband go with you and have him speak. And I was like, he doesn't know anything about what I'm going through. He has no clue what I'm feeling or anything like that. Like, and we were actually told we've been told that by more than one specialist, that if you want to really be heard and taken seriously, you have a man go with you. And to me, that is completely disgusting.
Yeah, it's awful.
So, like, anyways, we'll keep going. And
well, also, just with this whole situation, there is, like, I've seen so many people talk about this, and I've looked into it a lot, of just how, like, most research is done, like, most scientific medical research is done on men. And so, you know, something that, like, a period that really only affects, like, the female reproductive, you know, organs or whatever, it really has very little research. Which it's like, I think that's, you know, seeing that they can't even find it with tests, they don't have a test to even figure this out, is like, really? Like, nothing? Because I just don't think it's at, like, it is at, it's not at the forefront of people's minds, like, at all, I think. And most people don't think about it, most people don't really care. And I think that's...
I mean, I thought it was, like, normal. Like, I mean, I always lived with pain. I had lots of pain that I had chronic pain and whatever. And so, like, that, I mean, when you grow up like that, it's, like, normal. And it wasn't really until, like, you guys started your periods and stuff, and I was like, oh my goodness, I am not living this through you guys now. Like, it was one thing for me to live with the pain and deal with all of that, but it was another whole thing to then have to watch my kids go through that. And I remember, like, I've cried so many times because I was just like, I'm never want anyone to deal with like what I've had to deal with. Not even the pain. Like there's another whole side of it, and we'll get into that later.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, anyways, so you guys' stories.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, like the problem started when I got my period. So I was like 12. I think I was like freshly 12 when I got it. And it wasn't too bad, I think, when I very first got it, and then it just kind of got worse and worse and worse. So I mean, yeah, every month I take way too much medication, and we've tried different medication, like prescription, not prescription. I've tried so much, and it kind of just takes the edge off. I think like the hard thing about like stuff like this, like when you talk about like your period, is obviously it's terrible. It's terrible to, you know, miss school, having to miss school, having to miss events because of your period, having to plan around it. But I think what's like almost worse is the fact that you can't even really like talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you get sick, like if you get, you know, the flu, you can tell people like, oh, I've been throwing up and I feel really sick, so I can't come, or I can't do this, or, you know, whatever. And there's so much sympathy around it, you know, like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, that's terrible that that's going on, and it just makes sense, and people get it. But with like this, you can't even really talk about it, because first of all, a lot of people are just like, it's just your period, like, get over it. It's not that big of a deal. But then it's just like, it's not a valid excuse. It's an excuse to a lot of people. It's an excuse, and it's not valid. It's not real to a lot of people. It's whatever. But more than that, it's also like gross. Like, it's gross to talk about it. Like, to just like tell people like, oh yeah, I'm on my period, is like shameful.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, on the way to the bathroom, you hide your tampon, you hide your pad, you don't like,
oh my goodness,
you don't tell people. And when you do, which is kind of the hard thing with like COVID, because whenever I would have to miss things before COVID, I would just say, oh, I'm sick. Because I was like, I don't want to get into this whole thing and explain years of whatever. But now, obviously I can't, because then people would be like, oh, you have COVID. I'd be like, well, not exactly. So now I've had to like learn to explain it to people.
Well, because I remember, because you went back in person for the first quarter.
Yeah.
And, of course, when you got your period, we had to call in. And I remember I had to call in, of course. And I'm like, oh, and I can't say she's sick anymore.
Yeah.
So then I had to go into this as well. She has endometriosis. She's in a lot of pain, and she can't be there. Like, you know, and so, I mean, thankfully, the person who called back from the school was amazing, and she understood it, and she's like, I'm so glad that I got to call you, because I do understand what she's going through, and it really sucks and such. However, that is not the norm. That is so few and far between, having someone that will understand at all, or even at least give some sort of empathy or sympathy for.
Well, that's the funny thing too, is I've never even said like, or I don't say like, oh, I'm on my period. I'm like, oh, I have endometriosis, because it's just like, there's this whole thing of like disgust around periods and around talking about periods, and like, I mean, especially with guys, with like, you know, cis men, you tell them if you're on your period and they're like, oh, like, I might even act different around you, sometimes. So it's like this terrible thing. You're in so much pain. Emotionally, you're a wreck. Like, it's terrible because you're in so much pain, so that's wreaking havoc, but then also your hormones are just totally out of whack. And so it's like, when you need, like, comfort the most, people are like, ew, that's gross. Like, don't talk about that, that's gross.
And don't believe you.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like, I mean, that's a very normal thing for guys to be like, oh, have you ever got kicked in the balls, because that's pretty bad. I'm like,
Oh yeah.
yeah, we've had this
We've
conversation.
had this conversation. We're like,
Oh,
yeah, okay.
yeah.
You just keep getting kicked in the balls over and over and over again for like a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I'll put
you know,
heat pads all over your body,
then
so you're
we'll
sweating
talk.
and you have a fever,
Yeah.
and then
have someone
I
just
belittle you.
belittle
Say,
you.
like, come on, get up and do what you need to do.
Somehow give you some emotional trauma, tell you your dog died so that you're crying all week. I don't know. And even then, you will not
you need to
understand.
You figure out, like, you also need to bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow,
Like,
I don't know how we do that.
I have to
I
figure
don't
out
know,
how to
we
deal
just
with
keep
that.
our blood.
And just continue with your normal
so
life.
Oh yeah, and then you also have
know.
to go to school and talk to people normally. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so ridiculous.
And
Anyways.
sit in a class where you're not allowed to leave necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to get permission to leave if you need to, or you might not be allowed to even go.
And then we'll get people to make fun of you any chance they get. So that's obviously, I'm pretty sure, like, everyone with a period has had an experience with a guy where they're like, oh, come on. But it's also, like, I've had a lot of girls
Totally
be like, I'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I was out of school. Oh, I was out of school because I was on my period or whatever. And they'll go, oh, like, obviously, this is not everyone. I find a lot of
No.
girls are really good. But there are, like, there are definitely some girls that will be like, oh, really? Like, Because I was, every month, like, I never miss school. Personally, I just push through.
Oh my god.
I don't know, like, I get, like, some of us need, some extra help. I'm like, okay, that kind of hurts my feelings. I don't know. Which, I mean, like, great, that's so awesome that you can keep living with your period. I'm like, honestly, I'm so happy for you. But, yeah, like, it's just, like, weird how uncomfortable we are with this very natural thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I just find it really weird. But, you also, like, my mom also mentioned earlier this thing of, like, it's not just the week of your period, which I've talked about so much and I've thought about so much because it's so frustrating. Yeah, there's literally maybe one good week of the month. Because the week before, I'm, like, my whole body hurts. And I'm just, like, really, like, this is, like, a common joke that, like, people with periods always say is, like, oh, like, when you cry and then you get your period the next day.
Oh, yeah.
Because, yeah, I'll be, like, crying all week. I'll be so emotional, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is so weird. I feel so, like, oh my gosh, I feel crazy. But then I get my period, and I'm like, oh. So there's that whole thing, and then you get your period. But, I think, yeah, you're coming down from so much medication that you should not have been taking that much. But there's also, like, such a, like, mental side to it, because I find it really isolating. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, just for the fact that, like, I'm also just in so much pain that I can't get really out of my bed. So I'm not talking to anyone. I'm not, around people. I can't really go outside. Like, I can't, these things, I find myself getting, like, really just kind of depressed when I'm on my period sometimes, because I have, even this list of things that I can do to help when I'm feeling, depressed or anxious or something, and I can't do those things, because all those things include, like, go talk to a friend, go outside, whatever. So there's that, and then there's just, like, you can't really talk about it with anybody, so it's just this whole thing. So I find the week after, too, I'm pretty much always in just, like, this depression almost for, like, the whole week, where I'm just, like, I just don't feel good about myself. It's so weird, and I've noticed it every month, like, pretty much every month, that the week after is just, like, terrible. Like, I'm just sad and completely out of it, and my emotions are out of whack, and it's just really, yeah, I mean, it's just really hard. It's really isolating, and then you only have, like, one good week. Like, you have 1 week out of the month that you can actually, like, do things, which is really frustrating, and it just makes it, you know, like we talked, and, you know, anything that's, any invisible illness, anything like this is so hard because you're going through pain, but then you're also going through it alone, because nobody believes you, nobody really cares. A lot of people just don't really care and think you should just push through. And then there are people who, like, there are people with your illness, or there are people who deal with what you deal with, who do push through, and then everyone goes, but guys, look at them. Look at that girl. She has a period, and she's freaking playing sports right now or something. I don't know. And I'm like, well, I don't...
Just, like, on the beach, in a bikini and
like,
stuff.
Come on.
It's like,
I'm like, well, that's not
everyone's story.
Yeah, which is great if you can do that. That's so awesome.
Oh, yeah.
But I think taking one person and being like, but if they can do it, you can do it. No, I actually can't. I actually cannot. We're not the same person, so I don't know why you would think that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking about that, because I think we've mentioned it on here before. Because, like, we've all gotten those comments of, well, I have this illness, and I am still able to go to work.
They're like, I get it.
Like, you just kind of have to just
Suck
push
it up.
through. Like,
Suck it up and deal with it.
it's life. And
I'm
it's like, now looking back on those comments, it's like, oh my goodness, like, you're able to go out. Like you said earlier. Like, when you have your period, when my hips were really bad in high school, there was no, like, pushing through. Yeah. Like, I could not walk. There's no, like, faking it. There's no, like, well, just, like, go for an hour.
Right.
That doesn't happen. That's not possible.
Yeah.
It just, like...
Yeah.
Also, like, why should I have to push through?
Yeah.
I've always thought this, of, like, why should I have to? Because there have been times where I've been like, I'm gonna push through. And then you know what happens? I'm freaking hunched over the toilet at school in the middle of math class, you know, crying because I'm in so much pain.
Calling me.
And oh my gosh, calling my mom, crying. Like, you know what? I'm just, like, it's just, like, annoying that we constantly are like, well, just push through. Why should I have to push through? You shouldn't have to push through. You should be able to be given the empathy and the space to just experience what you're experiencing, instead of just being like, well, you're just gonna do it. Like,
yeah.
Well, I actually think that, like, if you're given the space, people might actually push, like, then they can make their own decision.
Yeah.
And maybe there are times that they could actually push through, and maybe they're not. But why can't we just leave that up to each person?
Yeah.
Like, there were times that I pushed through. I know there were times that, like, each of us have. You know? I mean, there are times where it's like, okay, this has to happen. This is happening, and I have to do it anyways.
Yeah, for sure.
But why does it have to be that, like, why isn't it okay that I just make that decision for myself?
Yes.
And there's always this comparison, and this, like, you know, comparison to someone else, and comparison to other, like, and it's, like, just not believed. Like, I don't understand that. I don't get it. I know, like, what I have found, what I've realized actually over the last while now, is that I actually created, I don't even know exactly how to say, but, like, basically I had to constantly be proving how sick I was.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So I was always talking about it. I was always trying to figure out another way. Like, I literally have memories of, with different people, different spaces, different times, but standing there and just this desperation of trying to, like, how can I describe this in such a way that you will actually just believe me? That, like, and trying to figure out, and I'm like, there's no way to actually describe how awful, like, how awful it was. There's no way to describe to you the pain, like, And I mean, that the thing is too, is like I have a very high pain tolerance, which, and I think you guys all, I think we all do. And I think it comes from living with so much pain all the time. I mean, you just kind of, you know, develop that. But, like, but constantly, and now too, I'm like, but why was I always had to prove, like, my pain, try to explain it. And I'm like, how sad. Like, someone that lives with chronic pain, or pain, like, from, like, this, like, endometriosis, where it's incredible pain, we don't want to think about the pain.
Yeah.
It's already so there and so painful. Yeah. I don't want to have to think about it to try and explain it to someone.
Yeah.
Like, I would love for someone just to, like, go, wow, like, that sounds awful.
Yeah.
What do you need?
Yeah.
Well, I just need to go home and go to bed. Like,
yeah. And giving you the space. Oh my gosh, giving you the space to, like, go home and go to bed.
Right.
And not, like, oh, couldn't you just push for, like, whatever.
Yeah. Like, it's just, it's so hard to, you know, when your body is working against you.
Yeah.
And to just be in that mindset of, like, then focused on that. Like, I don't want to be focused on the pain. Like, I would do everything possible or anything possible to forget about it, to not have to think about it. I don't want to have to then sit there and try and have to talk about it more to try and explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do we want to leave with people from this? Or are there more stories to tell? Or is there anything more that you guys wanted to?
I don't know.
Okay, so what do we want to leave with? What do we want to leave with people? Like, what are the takeaways then?
Maybe let's just, I think people just really, I'm included in this. I think we all need to just really, like, lean into the fact that our experience is not everyone else's experience. And our understanding of the world is not the same as everybody else's. And I think, like, a lot of times we just like to assume that, well, if I can do it, you can do it. Well, if I can't do it, then you shouldn't be able to do it. And, you know, for good or for bad, like, I find we even make ourselves feel bad sometimes. I do this all the time. I make myself feel bad because I'll go, well, they can do it. Like, they're fine. But that's not my experience, clearly. And it's like, clearly I'm trying, but, you know, and I just think if we all, like, accepted that we all have different experiences, we all have different, like, we all have to walk through this world in different shoes. And if we accepted that, I think there'd be a lot more empathy. And realizing that, like, okay, maybe even, okay, we both have the same illness or whatever, but maybe we don't experience it the same, because of course you don't. Like, no two people are going to experience one thing the same way.
Well, and I think that was, like, we were talking about that too the other day, is, like, why do we have to even compare? Why is it a comparison? Like, why do we have, like, and I actually think some of that comes is because we always want to try and relate. We want to try and relate with people. So we want to try and, like, because that's how sort of we connect as humans. Like, if I can try and relate, the problem is that I think where we get caught up is we think we need to actually understand. And so instead of just accepting where someone is at, wherever that is, and it's most likely going to be different from me, and that's okay. It's not a good or bad thing. It just is. And so if we can just accept it, then we don't need to compare, because then the other side, which we were talking about the other day, is that mine isn't as bad.
Yeah.
That mindset.
Well, yeah, like, that's the interesting thing about illness in our house. It's a really interesting situation, because, like, the four of us, specifically the three of us, deal with a lot of health things, but different, you know?
Yeah,
And so that's where it's really interesting, even just to see it in our house, where, like, we will all have similar narratives of, we've all had people go, well, you can push through, you know? But the experience is very different,
Yeah.
right? Like, we were talking at the beginning that, like, the three of us were diagnosed with endometriosis. I still don't even really think about that. I don't even really identify with that.
Yeah.
Because my experience is not your guys' experience.
Yeah.
My experience is of, like, yes, at the beginning, it was very painful. But now, it's more just very inconsistent. Like, I could go without a period for, like, 3 months.
Right.
And then it'll come back, and maybe I'll have it for 5 days, or maybe I'll have, like, 2 days of really bad pain, or, like, it's just never consistent.
Well, and that's the thing, is, like, so we all have endometriosis, and yet it's affected us completely differently, but that is still an issue.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's still an issue, that it is so inconsistent and whatever, and
And it's
you
still
know,
valid.
yeah, and you
Yeah.
were passing out, and I've never passed out, but you know what I mean? But it's like, and we are literally, like, blood family, and we all have the same illness, and yet it affects just the three of us completely differently.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, just, like, a perfect sign of, like, so if not even we experience it the same, how in the world would every single person with endometriosis in the entire world all experience it the exact same way and need the exact same things, too?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just not reality.
Yeah, I just, like, the biggest thing with, like, thinking about health things for me is just thinking about how influential it would have been to, and will be in the future, hopefully, to have people that were close to me actually have empathy. Because, like, as we've talked throughout, and the last few episodes where we've talked about health stuff, that is, like, a different kind of betrayal, to have someone you're close to not understand and not have empathy for these kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like,
and, you know, really, I mean, you said it best in the episode that we did that was mostly for you, telling your story. And I mean, I'll never forget, I mean, it was a clip that we posted, actually, but was like, you know, you were like, I don't need you to understand.
Yeah.
You can't understand.
That's the
And
thing.
I think it's perfect, and each of us can say that, and each person listening is going to have something that no one else can understand either. And I think that is where we just need to accept. We just need to accept people. And I mean, this can go for way more things than just health.
Yes.
We just need to accept people where they're at. You know, we don't need to judge. We don't need to make things good or bad, right or wrong all the time. Like, yes, there's definitely things that are right or wrong, and I mean, I get that.
So maybe we're not talking about, like, the extremes.
Right. But, like, these kind of things.
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to just judge, because we can only judge from our own perspective, our own limited knowledge that we have.
Yeah.
And if we would just learn to just accept first, then we would actually be more in a space of being able to, like, actually listen to someone and hear someone. Yeah. And then instead of maybe me having to sit there and try and prove to you that I'm in so much pain that I can't really do this, and I'm not sure what I can do. Maybe I would actually be able to think about what I could do.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I could think about, like, something else other than just all my pain. And
Yeah, like, maybe if we could give true empathy.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could give true empathy to people, then maybe we would have the space to really look for solutions, to look for, maybe not even solutions, but look for, like, I don't know, I can't think of the word, but, like, basically, like, help. Like, okay, so how can we make our lives easier? Like, how can we help you to, whatever, like, just something I think of is, like, school. That's a very, like, easy example of, if we could just give empathy, then maybe instead of going, well, it's just not real and it's not a good excuse, so you better be at school tomorrow. Instead, we could make a plan for, okay, I'm gonna be missing school, so how about we make a plan so that you are not missing work and you're not showing up a week later, completely behind and feeling bad and whatever.
Well, because then it's not just the work that's missed. Then there's all the guilt that goes with it.
Exactly.
And then all the comments and all the other stuff. Like, it's not even just the work.
So
like,
you're
the
not
work
exactly. So you can't even just, like, relax. Like, you can't even just take the pain and relax, because you're thinking, well, what if I show up on Monday and all my friends are gone and nobody wants to hang out with me? What if I show up on Monday and my teacher yells at me? I'm going to be so behind. Everyone's going to be making comments. Oh my gosh, everyone's probably talking about me in class and joking about, 'cause people would make jokes about how, like, oh, Kaylee, like, we all know you're lying. Like, we all know you just skipped class. I'm like, what? Why would I? Anyways, but, like, if we could give true empathy, we could come up with real solutions. I don't want to say solutions, but a real plan. Something to actually help, because that would help everyone. No one would be stressed. No one would have to, I don't know. You know
because
what I mean?
that goes right perfectly with, like, all the mental health issues that we're seeing and the mental health challenges. Because to me, it is completely valid to take a mental health day. That I need a day for my mental health.
Yes.
I think it's starting to be a little more accepted. However, in a lot of cases, it's really not.
No,
and to me, that should be a thing. And that's the same thing. Like, instead of just being so focused on this right or wrong, like, you're wrong to stay home, you're right, like, or good or bad. Well, it's a good thing that you came anyways. And but, like, for me, like, when I was in that much pain, like, if you can imagine, like, I mean, I can't even figure out a way to describe it, honestly. Like, it was childbirth. Literally, having children was what I felt every single month. And it was like, how much do you think I'm getting out of a class when I'm sitting there in that much pain? And I might all of a sudden have to run to the bathroom anyways. And I don't know what's going on. I can't even think straight anyways.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like, if we could just have empathy and just accept.
Yeah, I really
and just
think
listen to people.
Yeah.
Like, listen. Why not ask them their story?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to make them prove how sick they are to you. And, like, people that deal with sickness, with illness, with chronic pain, they don't actually want to think about it and talk about it all the time.
No.
They want to think about and talk about other things. And then not only are you made to think and talk about it, then you're made to, like, prove yourself to people.
Yeah. You almost have to make it, like, worse than it is. You have to be like, it's like I was beaten with a knife.
Yeah.
Which it's like, it's actually worse than that. But you know what I mean?
It
like,
is.
if you're like, if you drop me out of a plane, and it's like, because you're coming up with all these weird, like, examples. Because you're trying to be like, but trust me.
All I really would like is just, like, someone to go, wow, that sounds so awful.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry you have to deal with that. Like, is there anything I can do for you? Like, for you at school. Like, would have been, hey, I know you're off, like, can I get you homework? And, I mean, you did have
Yeah, which
a couple,
there were definitely people who were amazing.
Did do that, and that's what you need, though.
Exactly. And
it's
for
just those people,
teachers especially, not to be putting that on you.
Yeah.
Of like, oh, well, did you really? Also, this might be a little bit off, but I just feel like this needs to be said of like, so often it's like, oh, well, you just don't want to do the work. Well, you're just trying to skip, you're just trying to do that. The thing is, most of the time it's not. Like, people, I feel like so many people love to be like, oh, but like, they're gonna take advantage of the system. But like, who really cares? Because at least you're helping somebody, but also it's like, most people aren't. Like, most people are not lying when they're saying, hey, I'm in so much pain that I can't get out of bed, or whatever. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
So, it's just...
So, empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy, belief, acceptance. Mm-hmm. Like, those things would be amazing. Amazing. Yeah. And really, those things can go into any area of life.
Yeah.
Every area of life. Mm-hmm. If we just took those things into every area, every time you meet someone, like, just accept first. Just believe them where they're at. Mm-hmm. And what can you do to help? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just listening. Like, it's not that you have to do something for someone all the time.
Yeah.
But a lot of times for me, like, it's just belief. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, that really sucks. Like, I'm sorry you're going through that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah. Do we have anything else? I
don't think so.
No? Okay.
I can't think of anything.
I think we got everything out.
For now, I mean, it's definitely going to be sort of a precursor into like some mental health talks that we're going to do and stuff too, because this is really kind of tied in the belief and the empathy and acceptance and all that kind of stuff. And you know, because this really there's a huge mental health side to this that
for sure,
like, you can't even get into right, you know, we can't get into it right now, but you know, we will be definitely having some conversations about that. So,
yeah.
And that'll be coming up. And, yeah, I think we're good. So,
yeah.
Jillian, where can they find us?
We're on TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube and podcast apps. I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
The official WWP.
Yep. Yep. And all our own social media.
It'll be linked below.
Yeah, everything will be linked and stuff. So, yeah. If anyone has any topics that they want discussed, or anything,
let us know.
We'll discuss them.
I think next week will be.
What are we doing next week?
It'll be a
fun
exciting
podcast for Easter.
I don't need to get into it. It'll be exciting.
It'll be a good one.
Exciting.
We did miss a week. If you are watching regularly and you missed one, we hope that you did miss it. That you noticed. But we did miss one. This week was posted, and this will be coming up, and we're gonna just keep going at different topics. We have so many, but I mean, we're always open to more. So.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So we'll see you next week on Wait, What?